Not all rage is loud. Some of it folds laundry with a tight jaw. Some of it checks in on everyone, while quietly unraveling. Some of it becomes so good at disappearing it forgets what it feels like to exist. And some rage, it wears a smile so convincing, even you believe it. Until it doesn't. Until one day it surfaces, not as cruelty, but as truth. Unfiltered, holy and impossible to keep down. You weren't born angry. You were born porous. But no one taught you what to do with that much feeling. You feel what others hide. Long before they speak, you sense the emotional shift. The coldness behind the I'm fine. The grief beneath the laughter. The tension that never gets named. It's not magic. It's not drama. It's just how you're wired. You pick up what others release, and over time, you've learned to carry it better than they can. They call you intuitive, empathic, sensitive. But those are surface words. What you are is a well. You absorb pain that's not yours. You carry storms no one admits they created. You patch leaks in sinking boats that were never yours to bail. And you do it quietly, gracefully, automatically, because somewhere long ago you learned that your presence kept things stable, that your stillness made the chaos feel safer. That being the one who understood meant you'd be needed, and maybe, just maybe, loved. Psychiatrist Judith Orloff calls it emotional absorption. Elaine Aron calls it high sensory processing. Arlene Montgomery explains it neurologically, trauma stored in the right hemisphere, unspoken but remembered by the body. You call it normal, because it's the only life you've known. But there's something no one sees. You have no outlet, and even the deepest well begins to drown itself when it holds too much. Because your empathy isn't just a gift, it's a weight. And no one's asked if you're tired of carrying it. You know what it feels like to hold someone else's grief in your stomach, to smile through their tension, to take on pain as if doing so could keep them from breaking. But now, something's different. You've begun to sense something gathering beneath the waterline. Not sadness, not fatigue, something hotter, something sharper, something ancient. You call it irritability. You call it emotional burnout. But it's not. It's rage, not against them, but against how invisible you've become. Because no one notices the one who listens too well, the one who stays too long, the one who's been bleeding empathy until the edges fray. You've been proud of your stillness. But that stillness was pressure. And pressure always seeks release. Even if it looks like kindness, even if it sounds like patience, even if you've forgotten it's there. This is the paradox that no one prepared you for. The more you disappear for others, the more you forget how to come back. And one day, the water inside you will rise so high, it will not be quiet anymore. You know how to manage the room? The energy, the tension, the subtle shifts between what's said and what's meant. You do it automatically. You laugh when it's uncomfortable. You nod when you want to scream. You smile while something in you folds in half. And people thank you for it. You're so grounded. You're such a good listener. You're the one I can always count on. But inside, a different story is unfolding. One that doesn't sound like calm. It sounds like, please, not again. You didn't choose this. You adapted to survive it. Pete Walker calls it the fawn response. The trauma reflex that says, if I can make myself agreeable enough, maybe I'll be safe. You learned early that being soft kept others from exploding. That being easy kept the peace. That your silence was a kind of love language that made chaos feel controlled. And so you performed peace over and over until it became your identity. But peace that comes at the cost of self isn't peace. It's compliance, it's erasure, it's a beautiful kind of extinction. Karla McLaren calls it toxic serenity. The act of staying externally calm while your inner world begs for oxygen. Because while you nod and agree and absorb, your shadow is making notes. Jung said, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is lived, the blacker it is. You've buried your anger beneath layers of compassion, your resentment beneath loyalty, your truth beneath the desire to not be a burden. But every moment you choose the performance of harmony over the practice of honesty. You pay, not with explosions, but with slow disconnection from your own body, the headaches, the fatigue, the numbness. That's not stress, that's you abandoning yourself for the 1000th time. You don't yell, you vanish, you don't argue, you accommodate. But now, something inside you is whispering, louder each day, what about me? And you can't ignore it anymore. The paradox is cruel. The more peace you offer, the less you're allowed to need any. The more you give, the more people forget you're running out. And the most dangerous part? You've forgotten too, forgotten that your kindness was a strategy, that your agreeableness was a shield, that your sainted persona has teeth beneath the smile. But now the mask doesn't fit the same. It itches, it slips, it cracks. And you feel it rising, not to ruin peace, but to reveal what false peace has stolen. Because peace without boundaries doesn't last. It builds a dam, and every dam has its breaking point. You never meant to break. You built your life around not breaking, around holding things in, holding them together, holding yourself still. You were proud of how much you could carry, proud that no one could tell when you were hurting, proud that you didn't make things worse, but somewhere along the way, you stopped noticing that you weren't getting better either. It starts with little things. Your tone sharpens. Your eyes don't soften the way they used to. Someone asks something small, and your breath catches like you're drowning. You think, what is wrong with me? But that's not the real question. The real question is, what finally stopped letting you disappear? Because this isn't sudden. This is the 1000th quiet injustice finally growing claws. It's not burnout, it's not oversensitivity. It's not you being selfish. It's accumulated silence turning into flame. Philomela was silenced in myth, her voice stolen, her pain buried. But even without a tongue, she told her story, with thread, with tapestry, with the bones of what had been taken from her. You still have your voice. You just forgot it belonged to you. And now, after a lifetime of managing everyone else's comfort, you've reached a place beyond control. You snap, or you shut down, or you walk out. Maybe you cry harder than you ever have. Maybe you say things that make people step back. They say you're not acting like yourself. But what they mean is, you're no longer acting like the version of you we preferred. The version that smiled, that kept the peace, that took the hit and said, it's okay. You're not okay. You haven't been okay. And your rage isn't cruelty. It's clarity. It's your soul screaming through the cracks in your persona. It's the sacred fire McLaren speaks of. The kind that says, enough. You don't want revenge. You want recognition. You want someone to notice that you've been bleeding under your smile for years. But this rage, it isn't for them. It's for you. For the version of you who said yes when she wanted to scream no. For the version who raised his hand to help when he was already drowning. For the younger you who never got to ask, what about me? Jung told us that what we repress does not disappear. It waits in shadow. And when the mask slips, the shadow steps forward, not to destroy you, but to rejoin you. You were never meant to carry everyone. You were never meant to be a container for other people's chaos. And now that container is cracking. Because the well doesn't go dry, it floods. Because the mask doesn't fall off, it shatters. Because the dam doesn't gently leak, it breaks. This is what rage looks like when it's been polite too long, when it's been shushed and smiled over and called being the bigger person. It doesn't want war, it wants justice. And justice, in this case, begins with you choosing yourself, not because it's selfish, but because it's sacred. The rage came, and now you're left with its echo. The quiet is deafening, but it's not peace. It's aftermath. There's wreckage in your chest. You look around at the people who flinched. You look at your reflection and wonder if you've become the villain in your own story. That's how it starts, not with liberation, with shame. The guilt hits first. It always does for people like you. You've spent a lifetime prioritizing how others feel. Now you're drowning in how you made them feel. And no one is asking how long you were hurting before you broke. You start to doubt the eruption. You start to wish you could rewind. You think, maybe I was too much. But pause here, breathe here. This guilt isn't truth. It's programming. You were trained to believe that your discomfort is dangerous, that your truth is disruptive, that your anger makes you unlovable. It doesn't. What makes you unlovable is the slow, silent extinction of your own needs. What makes you unrecognizable is the smiling corpse you became to keep others calm. And now, finally, you see yourself. Not the performance, not the role, not the good one, the strong one, the balanced one. Just you, unfiltered, unprotected, uneasy. Jung said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And he was right, because now you're in the mirror, and for the first time, you don't look away. You see the anger, the grief, the boundaries you were never allowed to build. And instead of flinching, you lean in. Francis Weller calls grief a skill. Anger is part of that grief. The grief of having swallowed yourself to be digestible. You are not breaking down. You are unburying. You are not destroying relationships. You are ending performances. There's a woman who once wrote 50 letters she never sent. Each one began with, "Here's what I wish I could say." She hid them in a box until one day she read them aloud, just to herself. Not to hurt anyone, but to finally hear what truth sounded like in her own voice. You don't need to send your letters, but you do need to stop pretending they don't exist. You don't need to scream, but you do need to stop whispering. You don't need to explain, but you do need to choose what's no longer sustainable. Because you are not here to be a shape others fill. You are not here to be a peace treaty that signs away your own name. You are here to remember who you were before peace became your prison. And that means learning to trust the anger you were taught to fear. Not because it's always right, but because it's always honest. This isn't about staying mad. It's about staying real. And if the mirror now shows you something messy, good. It means you're finally seeing you. Not the version you managed, not the version you polished, but the version who breathes in their full volume and doesn't apologize for taking up space. There's a fire that doesn't burn you. It remakes you, not with rage, but with recognition. Because healing doesn't always look like light. Sometimes it looks like fire burning through everything that isn't yours, everything you swallowed to be loved, everything you abandoned to keep the peace. You used to think calm was your destination. That healing meant becoming soft again, smiling again, giving again. But now you know. Healing isn't about going back to how you were before the breakdown. It's becoming who you were before you learned to break yourself. This fire is sacred, not because it's loud, but because it's clear. Clarity is what you've needed all along. Karla McLaren calls it boundary intelligence. Anger is a compass, not a curse. It's the voice that says, "This is too far. This is not mine. This is where I end and you begin." You are still an empath. You still feel everything. But now, you know what not to carry. You know how to feel without fusing. How to listen without losing. How to love without leaking. You've stopped mistaking self-erasure for compassion. You've stopped mistaking over-functioning for strength. You've stopped trading authenticity for attachment. Because empathy, without boundaries, becomes grief. And you've grieved enough. Now you become something else. You are the mirror. But you also cast your own reflection. You are the well. But now you have an overflow valve. You are still made of water, but you've claimed your fire. And that fire, it doesn't scorch. It illuminates. It warms. It protects. It says, "This is where I stand. This is who I am. This is what I no longer apologize for." This is your phoenix moment, not because you were destroyed, but because you let the old rules turn to ash. The rule that said, "Be small." The rule that said, "Be kind no matter the cost." The rule that said, "You're only lovable when you're quiet." They're gone now. You still carry love, but now you carry yourself first. You still carry light, but now it doesn't blind you to your own needs. You still carry softness, but now you know softness is strongest when it isn't afraid to say no. This is the empathy that includes you, the love that doesn't sacrifice you, the wholeness that doesn't perform goodness to survive. And from here, everything changes, not because you've become someone else, but because you've returned to someone the world tried to make you forget. You almost made it through this life without ever being heard. You almost stayed small enough to fit into their comfort, soft enough to never make anyone flinch, selfless enough to convince even yourself that your needs didn't matter. You almost lived as the mask, as the healer, as the reflection. You almost disappeared inside the performance of being good, but you didn't. You broke. You burned, you spoke, and in the wreckage of the role you played, you found something no performance could hold. You, unedited, unapologetic, uncompromising. You found the part of you that always knew silence was never peace. That kindness without truth is manipulation. That love without boundaries is not love, it's erasure. And now you've returned. Not as the person they once relied on, but as the person you never thought you had permission to become. To the empath who almost disappeared, you stayed. And staying isn't weakness. It's sacred rebellion. You are no longer the one who absorbs until they leak. You are the one who sees clearly and chooses consciously. You are no longer the ghost in the room. You are the one holding the mirror, with yourself in it this time. So speak, not to shout, not to shame, but to name what was never named. If this story echoed something you've carried, say so. Say it for the version of you that didn't have the words. Say it for the stranger, scrolling, who's still wearing the mask. Say it because silence kept you small, and expression might set someone else free. If this was your reflection, let it reflect back, in the comments, in the breath you've been holding, in the truth you've never said aloud. You don't need to be poetic, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be real. And if someone you love is disappearing inside their empathy, share this with them, not as a solution, but as a mirror. Let them see what you saw. Let them remember what you remembered. And if this opened something in you, if this fire felt familiar, if you want more people to know they are not too sensitive, too much, too broken, then pass this forward. Like, share, not for metrics, for memory. So someone else doesn't almost disappear the way you almost did. This wasn't just a video, it was a reckoning, a return, a remembering. And you didn't just watch it, you walked through it. You stayed, you spoke. And that is how the silence ends.